A single encrypted file lit the fuse beneath the dynasty. What began as a whisper in a journalist's inbox soon threatened to rewrite the story of one of America's most powerful families. It was the kind of revelation that could shake public trust, rupture political alliances, and redefine legacy itself. The file, labeled only Project B, contained what appeared to be an authenticated DNA report. The conclusion it hinted at was unspeakable: questions surrounding the true paternity of Barron Trump. For days, the file was passed like contraband among a handful of Washington reporters. Each of them understood the explosive weight of what they were holding. It wasn't merely a scandal, it was a potential fracture in the myth of the Trump dynasty. Within hours, whispers turned into panic inside the White House residence. The atmosphere was suffocating. First Lady Melania Trump stood in her private office, the printed DNA reports clenched tightly in her fist. The silk calm she was known for had vanished, replaced by a fury so cold it seemed to drain the air from the room. "This," she hissed, her accent slicing through the silence, "is not politics. This is an attack on my son, on my motherhood." Her chief advisor, an aide loyal since the campaign days, stood frozen. Melania's voice was low but searing, her composure cracking under the weight of betrayal. "Find who did this," she ordered, "and when you find them, burn them to the ground." What followed was not chaos but precision. Calls were made, editors were contacted, lawyers whispered to producers, networks were reminded of the importance of discretion, especially when it came to minors. The machinery of power moved quietly but effectively, snuffing out the story before it could breathe. For a brief moment it worked. The leaks slowed, the chatter dulled. But not everyone was willing to let the truth suffocate under political pressure. Across town, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat in her office, the same documents open before her. She wasn't interested in gossip or dynasty drama. What caught her attention was the unmistakable pattern of suppression, the same kind of invisible coercion she'd fought against her entire career. To Jasmine, this wasn't about bloodlines, it was about power, the kind that silences truth when it threatens comfort. When she stepped in front of the cameras the next morning, Washington held its breath. The Capitol steps glimmered under the harsh sunlight, the press swarming, microphones thrust forward. She didn't hold up the DNA report. Instead, she held up a list of news outlets. "In the last 24 hours, she began, her voice cutting through the noise, "at least a dozen major networks have received quiet but firm requests from the First Lady's office to kill a story. They were told it was to protect the child, but make no mistake, this isn't protection, it's control." The air shifted, reporters exchanged glances. "The story itself," she continued, "is irrelevant compared to what's happening behind the scenes. A sitting First Lady is leveraging government influence to intimidate a free press. The truth does not need bodyguards, lies do." That single line struck Washington like lightning. Within minutes, the quote was everywhere, trending across every social platform, headline after headline reframing the scandal. The question was no longer what the DNA report said, but why the White House was desperate to hide it. Inside the residence, Melania watched the coverage in silence. Her face, unreadable at first, hardened into resolve. She could no longer ignore the storm outside. Hours later, she appeared before the cameras in the Rose Garden, poised, immaculate, but visibly shaken. "I am a mother first," she declared, voice trembling just enough to betray the emotion beneath. "I will do anything to protect my son from cruelty, from lies, from those who wish to destroy his peace." It was a statement meant to quiet the fire. Instead, it fanned it. Across the airwaves, clips replayed Jasmine's words beside Melania's. The contrast was electric. One woman defending her family, the other defending the public's right to know. America found itself torn between empathy and accountability. Former President Barack Obama, in a televised interview later that evening, tried to bring balance. "This moment," he said calmly, "isn't about choosing sides. It's about remembering that truth, when buried, grows sharper with time." His words added weight, but the narrative had already escaped the control of statesmen. The fight now belonged to the people, and to Jasmine Crockett, whose courage had turned a quiet leak into a national reckoning. The following days blurred into frenzy. Reporters camped outside newsrooms. Late-night hosts dissected motives. The leak had evolved into something far bigger, a question of integrity in leadership. As the administration scrambled, another encrypted message surfaced, this time directed at multiple outlets simultaneously. It was a second file corroborating the authenticity of the first DNA report. There was no stopping it now. The secret Melania had fought so fiercely to bury was no longer confined to rumor, it was public domain. And yet, the world didn't end. What changed instead was trust. Melania, in private, collapsed under the emotional weight of it all. Her fury had burned through denial and into heartbreak. She understood then that power could protect many things: status, image, legacy, but not truth, not forever. Jasmine, meanwhile, became both celebrated and vilified. To some, she was a hero for standing against suppression. To others, she was reckless, intruding on private pain. But for Jasmine, it was never personal. The truth, she later said in an interview, doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to the people who have been told they can't handle it. In the end, the dynasty didn't crumble. It transformed. The Trump myth was no longer pristine, but real, human. And for the first time in years, the nation stared at its reflection without filters or rehearsed lines. A leaked cipher had lit the fuse, but it was courage and defiance that set off the explosion.